G'day, I'm Paul. So, I wanted to talk about a vehicle that is going to give a lot of established players a massive headache, and that is the BYD Shark. What a name. It is a new plug-in hybrid dual cab ute coming from Chinese manufacturer BYD, and I'm going to run you through some of the high-level specs, the design, and where I think this will excel, where I think it won't excel, and what I think the other manufacturers in this segment are going to have to do to catch up to this, and where I reckon pricing will land as well. If you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this video, you can use the time codes on the screen, or we've got some chapters down there if you're on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, I'd love it if you could subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon as well. But let's dive in and talk about the Shark. Now, let's talk about the high-level specs first, and let's start with the dimensions, I reckon, so you can paint a picture in your head of what this looks like. Length even. It's just under 5.5 metres long. Just under 2 metres wide, a little under 2 metres tall, wheelbase of almost 3.3 metres. So this is a big vehicle, and if you think about dual cab utes, they all used to be around the 5 metre mark, but they have all started gaining in length. And if you think about something like a Ford Ranger, that has grown significantly over the years. So this is going to really fit in there, but predominantly, especially in that wheelbase, it is actually quite a big vehicle, and it should mean that we have decent amount of leg room in the second row, which is something that is desperately lacking from some of the big players in this segment. So let's hope that that is definitely the case. Biggest feature though, and I'll get to the design in a sec, but the biggest feature is what is under the bonnet and under the skin. It is a plug-in hybrid system that pumps out 320 kilowatts of power at its peak, which I think is incredible stuff. And that all comes courtesy of a 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine under the bonnet. That drives a hybrid system that includes 2 electric motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear axle, talking about power and torque output of 170, 310 on the front axle and 150, 340 on the rear axle. And that is where you get your combined power output. So this is going to be some powerful stuff. That is mated to a 30 kilowatt hour battery, and that battery allows it to have up to 100 kilometers of driving range on the Chinese test cycle. And typically that is very generous. I would suspect that to be around 60 or 70 Ks when it is WLTP, or even stricter than that. So not a huge amount, but enough to get you to and from work without having to switch the engine on at all. And importantly for fleets, it is going to give the option of having a virtually electric vehicle for short distance drives, and ones that you can charge at the office and get tax rebates and other government incentives that I am very sure will be coming in the not too distant future. The other good thing as well is that this offers DC fast charging. A lot of plug-in hybrids just do AC charging. This will do DC charging at up to 40 kilowatts, which means it'll charge the battery in under an hour on a fast charge, which I think is pretty good. Then you get combined fuel economy of 1.5 litres per 100 Ks. If you've watched our other plug-in hybrid videos, you know to ignore that figure because it is a bit of nonsense. Your real figure that you want is the hybrid efficiency, which BYD claims is 7.5 litres per 100 K. So pretty good, about as good if not better than a diesel dual cab ute. So you are getting the benefit, power and torque, free driving when it is just on electricity alone, and then also the benefit of it being pretty efficient once it is moving as well. And that all combines to a 0 to 100 time of 5.7 seconds. So almost as quick as a Ford Ranger Raptor. So that is some serious performance pep there, which is quite impressive. Now let's talk about the design. The design is interesting. So they've gone kind of for a bit of a hybrid approach there. It kind of looks a bit like a Ford F-150, but then it's got its own sort of design elements there as well. So you can see on the front there, radar sensor there, big BYD lettering along the front there, and then an LED light bar that runs all the way along the top there, full LED headlights. You've got fog lights down the bottom there. And if you have a look at the back, similar arrangement there with that light that runs all the way along the back there. It's quite a big sort of muscular looking vehicle. It's quite impressive to look at, I reckon. Shark fin aerial along the top there, and then a sports bar over here as well. And then it appears to be side steps off on the side there too. Roof rails up the top, big old wing mirrors as well. Quite a decent looking setup. Here's that rear legroom I was talking about. And have a look at these seats too. This is actually pretty important for dual cab utes. Often you'll sit in a dual cab ute and just slide off the back seat, whereas these actually have quite a bit of side support as well. So you're getting an individual defined seat there, which I think is very useful. I just noticed that up the top there. I don't know what that is. It's a light or something like that. Air vents down the bottom there with a bit of storage there as well. Center armrest too, which I think is pretty good. So looks like a comfortable place to be seated. But I think this is probably the most impressive area for me. If you think about what is on sale at the moment in stuff like the Hilux, it feels so dated compared to this. This has a giant infotainment screen there in the center. You've got a screen ahead of the driver as well, big steering wheel, a control cluster in the center here for your four-wheel drive control, switching to hybrid mode, traction controls, that kind of thing. Air vents down here, up there, storage over here. So I really do think they have thought about a lot of functionality here for the end user. This feels like it's going to be a vehicle built for someone that wants a bit of comfort and just wants to feel like they're sitting in a premium environment. And I'll run through what I think this is going to cost a little bit later on. You'll notice in this shot as well, they've been quite clever here showing a cable that runs out and powers their projector and all that sort of stuff in the background. That's going to mean that this vehicle has vehicle to load, and that is a massively important appliance because it means you can rock up with a car like this to a work site and actually power tools, run things. If you're camping, you can power all your electrified equipment as well. And if it's anything like the F-150 Lightning that offers over 7 kilowatts of output, that is huge. That is enough to sort of reasonably fastly charge an electric vehicle. So I think that kind of functionality will be useful for not only tradesmen, but also people wanting to use this as a vehicle to get away and have fun with. In terms of the numbers there, inside the cabin, you've got a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster ahead of the driver, and then a 12.8-inch infotainment screen. The cool thing is that can also rotate, similar to what we've seen in the Atto 3. Press a button and then the screen rotates so you can have either vertical or landscape. Really useful feature, funnily enough. You've got built-in apps like Spotify and recording mode. It also comes with dash camera and that kind of thing. This will probably have, at the end of the day, a lower end model. This appears to be a higher spec variant, but you can see here the chassis is actually common between the plug-in hybrid variants. So you've got your internal combustion engine up the front there, battery pack there about center, fuel tank over here, and then 2 sets of electric motors. Packaging is really impressive because they've got enough room there for a full-size spare tyre under the rear. Even on the payload and capacity front, that's something I haven't touched on, but I'll go through that now. You've got over 800 kilos of payload, and again, when you think about some of the outliers in this segment, like your Ranger Raptors, it is a vehicle that's kind of built for fun and endurance driving and that kind of thing, but you pay a compromise when it comes to payload. This, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be all that compromised. Yes, there are some dual cab utes that will run over a ton worth of payload, but this kind of straddles in between. You've got your performance, you've got your drivability, your battery pack, but it also does over 800 kilos of payload. It is let down though on towing capacity, and that is 2,500 kilos. You're not going to get 3,500 out of this. And it's a bit of a fine balancing act here because they have a limitation on what the GVM of the vehicle is. So you can't have a gross vehicle mass of over 4.5 tons, because if you do, you need a truck license. And when you need a truck license, you make the hurdle and the barriers of entry quite high. So they have to sit it at under 4,500. And that means you've got to make a compromise somewhere because 30 kilowatt hour battery is heavy. Front and rear electric motors, heavy. 1.5 litre turbo 4, not that heavy. But once you add all of this together, you're eating into the weight that you would have available for payload or towing. And they don't want to compromise on payload. So as a result of that, you're compromising on towing. You're basically saying, okay, well, we have to compromise somewhere and it's not going to be payload, it will be towing. And as a result of that, you're going to limit yourself. If you do want to tow 2.5 tons, you can have 250 kilos of downball weight on the rear. That's going to eat into your payload. So you'll have around 800 kilos minus 250. And that means the rest is balanced between passengers and other cargo that you have in the vehicle. So it is a little bit of a compromise, but I'm glad they didn't bump this up to 3.5 tonne because I think it would be entirely unrealistic to be putting 3.5 tonnes worth of load on the back of this, 350 kilos worth of download on the rear, and then having capacity left over for anything else. I just don't think it would be a good combination, especially if you started running out of battery and only had a 1.5 litre engine to work with. Now that brings me to the point. What happens when you run out of battery? So this will be like any other plug-in hybrid vehicle, and the way that they work is they say, okay, we've got a 30 kilowatt hour battery, but we're not going to use all of that. Well, we're not going to show the customer that all of that is available. So typically what the vehicle will do, it'll run itself down to maybe 20% or 10% capacity, and it will say to the customer, you are out of battery, and it will predominantly then run the internal combustion engine. The reason it doesn't run itself all the way down is A, preservation of battery. You don't want it to go completely empty. But second to that, you still want to have that power boost. You've got 2 electric motors that need to be fed by electricity. And the 1.5 litre petrol engine there is going to be working pretty hard to move this. This is going to weigh well over 2,000 kilos, I suspect. So you don't want to rely only on that internal combustion engine, because if you do, you are then going to be in dire straits. If you're towing or going up a long hill, it is going to run out of steam pretty quickly. So what they do is they say, okay, well, we've got 10 or 20% of battery left. We're going to add that as a bit of power boost. The customer won't know that it's there, but it will be boosting everything along. The only drama you would have is if you're driving up a very long, continuous hill where you actually drain the balance of that battery, because at some point there, you're going to have to rely on the internal combustion engine to start charging the battery, so you build that reserve back up. So will be interesting to see how they manage that. I have driven other hybrid drivetrains and stuff like the GWM Haval, the Tank 300 and the 500, and they don't really work that well. It's like explosive torque, and then sometimes you don't have it, and it's just not always consistent. So I really am hoping that they have worked a lot on making this really work in its correct applications. Australia will be a massive market for this. They've done a lot of work here in Australia in development and also engineering the car. So I am hoping when we finally get behind the wheel of this, it is going to be fun to drive. Now, what happens to the rest of the competitors? Well, we do know that Ford is about to release a plug-in hybrid version of the Ranger. And look, Ford knows what they're doing in that pickup truck market. I have no doubts that it will be decent, but ultimately, this is quite impressive in terms of what they've thrown at it. Ford it's a premium product, the Ranger. It means that the plug-in hybrid version is probably going to be expensive. And I'm thinking $95,000, $100,000. It is going to be a lot of money. They're going to hope that fleets flock towards it. They have a bit more money to burn on those green initiatives. So I think ultimately it will be an expensive vehicle, the Ranger, and I think this is going to undercut it in a number of different ways. For the rest of the brands, they really don't have much coming. We know there are rumours of Triton going down the path of potentially a plug-in hybrid. We know that Toyota has a very mild hybrid system. We know that Isuzu is working on an electric D-Max, but I really don't think at the moment a fully electric dual cab ute is the answer. They just don't have what they need to achieve the task at hand. So I think this will be a good interim step. So look, it will be an interesting space. Cannot wait to drive this. Can't wait to see what other manufacturers do to combat this, because they're all going to have to do something ahead of new emissions rules that are coming into play next year here in Australia. They're going to force the hand of a lot of manufacturers to think on their feet and develop products that people want and also that will meet the government emissions regulations. So let me know what you think. I'm keen for your feedback. Are you looking forward to this? How much do you think this will cost? That is the other thing we don't know yet. Let me know in the comments section below. Do you think it's going to be expensive? Do you think it will be affordable? I am keen for your feedback. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. But till next time, take it easy.